What if I told you that one of the greatest guitar players of all time, yes, that guy, once asked Gene Simmons if he could join Kiss? We'll get to that wild card in a minute, but first let's talk about 4 guitarists who actually did try to replace Ace Frehley and why none of them ever truly could. So let's start off with Bruce Kulick, the technician without a pulse. Technically solid, professional, and capable of nailing anything that Gene or Paul threw at him, but that was the whole problem. He could play, no question, but what he brought in polish he lacked in personality. And Ace was all about personality. So Bruce's tone was sharp and he had perfect timing, but that imperfection that Ace had, the little bit of a lope and delay, that kind of drunken swing of the wrist made every solo and every chord feel spontaneous. And Bruce, for all of his competence, never quite lit the fuse. Up next is Mark St. John, the flash that never flashed. This guy was a shredder by reputation, and he played on Animalize back in the 80s. Kiss wanted someone that had a lot of fire and speed and technical prowess, and Mark St. John gave them all of that. But whereas Ace's playing danced between melody and madness, Mark St. John was kind of mechanical, had no flavor, and to make matters worse, he developed a really bad arthritic condition, which made it impossible for him to continue playing with the band. But even in that brief window, it was pretty clear that a virtuoso isn't necessarily what Kiss needed. They needed a rock star. Next up, of course, Vinnie Vincent, the overplayer extraordinaire. Now, the great shred experiment of Vinnie Vincent has left Kiss fans divided. Some people think that he was a better player than Ace and a better fit for the band. And he could outplay just about anyone technically, but he could also overplay more than anybody. Kiss needed riffs that you could remember and solos that you could hum, whereas Vinnie played solos you could barely follow. And he had a huge ego on top of his overplaying, so this didn't help, whereas Ace always kind of tried to remain humble. Vinnie's guitar work was fireworks, dazzling but gone. And then, last of all, and in my opinion least of all, is Tommy Thayer, the tribute player. So he is a dependable and disciplined kind of subordinate employee for Gene and Paul, and he started off as like a gopher, and he ended up being a replacement stand-in for Ace, and yeah, he knows how to play all of the notes, but he doesn't have any personality or originality to what he does. He's kind of a person playing a part in a stage play. And even though that was Ace's role too, was to step out there and play the spaceman, you've got Tommy Thayer here kind of playing Ace Frehley the way that a person would do it in an amusement park or something. So there are reasons why no one could replace Ace, and here they are. Reason number 1 is because Ace had a flair for melody that made every lick seem anthemic. Every time he came up with something, it was immediately hummable and memorable. He didn't just play solos, he kind of sang through his guitar. Reason number 2 is the lobe I alluded to earlier. That slightly off-kilter groove that he has, his kind of half swing and half stumble, is combined with lightning fast double picking. Now remember that when Ace first started coming up, we hadn't heard of Eddie Van Halen yet, and double picking was the way to get that really fast attack. And Ace combined this incredible double picking technique with his slight lobe, and you can't teach that or even replicate it. It's something that's in his blood and in his DNA, and that combination was also a perfect fit for the band Kiss, due to the fact that Peter Criss had an instinctive tendency to play ahead of the beat. Number 3 is Ace's humor. Ace made everything feel fun and spontaneous and exciting. And whether he was, cracking wise in an interview or playing a clever solo melody or actually nearly electrocuting himself on stage, there's something over the top and cartoonish and addictive about him. There's something that is genuinely and authentically rock star, and he was acting like one. And this translates into his playing and into his stage presence. Now, back to the little wild card, the tease I mentioned in the beginning about one of the greatest guitarists in history that tried to join Kiss. rumor has it that in the early 1980s, Eddie Van Halen actually asked Gene Simmons if he could join Kiss. Imagine that alternate universe where Eddie comes in tapping like a maniac in face paint. But Gene Simmons shot down the idea and told Eddie that he needed to stay in his own band and that Ed was a star and that if he just stuck with it, eventually Van Halen would break through. Because Gene knows what we know, which is that Kiss was never about technical ability and skill. It was always about attitude, and Ace Frehley didn't just have the Kiss attitude, he helped invent it. So what do you think? Do you think any of the guitarists I mentioned came close to capturing Ace's spirit? And if so, which one and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
MusicGuru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.